friends. I am so excited to share with you the first installment of our Cooking for Cancer series this October. So this first installment is just for our folks with metastatic cancer, and we are so excited to share it with you all. Sue, would you like to share any insights on kind of where this cooking class came from?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Aubrey. I know, we always have the voice of those that we serve front and center. And we have been asked to please have something that is just for our metastatic community when it comes to cooking, that it would be really something special. We're listening. And this is where the idea came from. So it really came from all of you, and we just took it back to the team and decided what a better time to do the series in the month of October when there is a lot of awareness going on. And of course, Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day is today. For us, it's every day. We're with you, we're by your side, but we wanted to have something special for you today and make it, about what we can do to bring you joy. So Aubrey is ready to bring some joy, and she has some fabulous recipes right out of the Cancer Fighting Kitchen cookbook. So if you have those available, or if it's right next to you, pick it out. But Aubrey, I'm excited, especially about that poached egg. I told you about that.
Yes, we have a poached egg coming more towards the end of the class. So I'll show everybody my tactic on making it. There are definitely multiple ways to go about it, but I have a couple nice recipes to share with you. My name, just to start, is Aubrey Red. I'm one of the culinary dietitians for Unite for Her. I know I didn't happen and introduce myself earlier, and we had speaking Sue Weldon, who is the founder of Unite for Her as well. So our goal is to enrich the lives, like Sue said, of those living with cancer, breast and ovarian cancers. So we want to continue this throughout life, and we want to make sure that you're feeling supported and like you have these tools, one of them being nutrition. So that's why I'm really excited to be able to share this with you all today. So first recipe I'm going to start with isn't the recipe out of the Cancer Fighting Kitchen cookbook, so you can hold on to that for just a second. It's a recipe from Cooking Light. I've adapted it a little bit. It is a 2 potato and beet hash. So very excited to get that started. I have here with me, if you can see in the background, I have some Farm Box RX produce. So that's one of our partner vendors that we work with at Unite for Her to provide produce to some of our participants, fresh produce delivered right to their door. So I had my Farm Box delivered yesterday, and I kind of picked through it so that I had some wonderful things to work on with you all. But to start with our potato and beet hash, I'm going to just heat up my pan here I have at the front. So I have a pretty large nonstick skillet. I'm going to turn it on medium high or so heat, just to kind of get it heated and get everything ready for when I'm started. First up to be prepped is I have a bell pepper. So it could be any type of bell pepper. It could be red, orange, green, what have you, just a bell pepper. And I'm going to chop it into nice sized chunks. So if you've never had a hash before, I would say most people have it at breakfast with some eggs, and it's usually some potatoes and some peppers combined, maybe some onions and garlic as well. All right, so here I'm just pulling the middle bit out, and I'm going to toss it in there. And what I'm going to do with my peppers is I'm going to slice them up into nice, again, bite-sized chunks. So I want to have a good bite to it when I'm eating it. All right. And each type of pepper is going to have a little bit different nutrition. They're all going to be great for us. They're all going to have hydration. They're going to have plant phytonutrients, which are supportive of our overall health and inflammation. But our different fruits and veggies of different colors are all going to have a different profile to them, which is so nice. And, we probably heard eat the rainbow since we were a kid, but it really has some truth to it. We want to make sure that we are eating a wide variety of colors, of veggies and fruit to make sure that we are reaping all those benefits of those plant nutrients. All right, so I have my pepper all chopped up here. And let me see, the pan's getting a little bit warm. With the pepper in the pan, I'm going to put some onion. So I spared everyone my tears, because if I cut this up on the camera, I would definitely be crying a little bit. So I spared all the tears for everyone, and I have my pepper my onion, I'm sorry, chopped up. This is a whole yellow onion that I just got into a nice fine dice that I have in here. So what I'm going to do now that my pan is warmed up, I'm going to pour in some olive oil, about a tablespoon or so. And then I have my onion going in. And it's starting to sizzle, which is perfect. And I'll have my pepper going in as well. All right, and I'm going to let these cook for about 5 minutes until they get a little bit soft. One good way to tell that they've started to cook is, especially the onions, they'll start to become a little bit more translucent. And so when I say translucent, I mean you'll be able to see through them a little bit. So now they're a pretty stark, solid white. But when they start to cook down a little bit, they'll have a little bit more see-through to them, and you'll be able to tell that they're starting to get to the point that they're ready to be done. All right, so I'll leave those again for about 5 minutes. While I have those cooking in the pan, I'm going to get ready my potatoes to go into the hash. So like I said, potatoes are often part of a hash. You'll see here, I have my like magic box of tricks here. I'm pulling out my potatoes and my sweet potato. So with these, I'm going to give them a nice scrub. I actually am going to keep the skin on my potatoes. So you could peel them if you want. If you're having any GI issues, sometimes fiber may not agree with you as much. So if you need to, you can always peel those. I like to leave the skin on for that additional fiber boost. So what I'm using is I just have a scrub brush in my sink and I'm scrubbing off any excess dirt. All right, so I got these nice and clean. And what I'm going to do is I'll start with the sweet potato. It's a little bit harder. So I'm going to put my potatoes to the side. I'm going to slice off the top and the bottom. I like to try to have limited food waste when I'm in the kitchen. So I am big on using as much of it as you can, especially with the rising cost of groceries these days. I think it's a good idea to try to utilize what you can and what you have. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and how to utilize some other things later on too. All right, so I've got this and I'm cutting it into slices now, and then I'm going to dice it into chunks. All right, so I'll leave that to the side for now. So I will sometimes stack these on top of each other, my whole pieces of sweet potato, and cut them that way. I'll start with this littlest one so that you can see kind of what size I'm going for. Again, we want bite size. So just a tiny little guy. We want to make sure that everything's going to be able to cook, and the bigger they are, the longer it's going to take to cook. So not to say that it's a problem if you have big pieces of sweet potato, it just may take your hash a little bit longer to cook. All right, and so I have my plate over here. I also have some garlic that I already chopped up on my plate. That I'm going to be putting in with the sweet potato and the potato. I need about a cup of each. All right. And so our sweet potato, along with the fiber, the orange color means it's going to have a lot of nutrients in it. It's going to have that vitamin A, beta carotene. So it's going to protect our skin health, our eye health. Overall, it's going to be very supportive of a nutrient. So we want to make sure, again, that varying of colors, getting in a lot of different options. All right. So I have my regular potato now. I'm going to cut up one and see how far that gets me first. Again, I need about a cup, and feel free, play around with the portions, play around with what you put in it too. If you find that, you don't love sweet potatoes, but you like, a standard white potato, just use those. If you really love sweet potatoes, but you don't like white potatoes, you could use just sweet potatoes. It's all about flexibility in the kitchen. I think that cooking is for everyone, and nutrition is such an important piece of the puzzle when we're thinking about our cancer journey and making sure that we're using that food as medicine approach, because the nutrients we're taking in are going to be important in impacting our health. So we want to continue to take in things that are going to positively support our internal well-being. All right. So I've got most of my potato chopped. I'm thinking we'll be good with just about one potato, and it was about half of the sweet potato. If you have a bigger pan, feel free to make an even bigger hash. My pan is pretty big, but it could definitely be a little bit bigger. All right. So if you hear the sizzling, we've got a good sizzle going with these. Some of my peppers and onions have started to brown up a little bit, and they're turning a little bit more translucent. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in my potatoes. I have them all here on my plate, and I have some garlic that I pre-chopped. We're going to put these all in together. And we're also going to add something super tasty, one of my favorite herbs, sage. So I'm going to use dried sage today. You could certainly use fresh sage. I normally would use fresh sage for that bold flavor, but I couldn't find any at the store when I was there. So I'm going to use the dried sage today. And I'm going to put in about a teaspoon. If you're using fresh sage, I would go for about a tablespoon of fresh chopped sage. Our herbs and spices are so wonderful when we're thinking about cancer care and inflammation, because they're all going to have those antioxidant nutrients in them. So we want to try to vary our herbs and spices, get in a good amount of them. You know, having them as part of our meals frequently is going to make sure that we're really utilizing all of those antioxidants well. All right, so I'm going to give this a stir. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave it to continue doing this for about 25 minutes. All right. So I'll spread it out a nice thin layer because I want everything to be cooking. And I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes. Normally, I am a pretty flexible person in the kitchen, and I am not setting timers, or I'm shaking things in and, you know, not measuring them necessarily, but I like to be a little bit more routine when I'm on the cooking demos to make sure that everybody knows kind of exactly, you know, what timing is going to be best. I did see a question in the chat. Sue, did we have a question, I think, about sage I saw?
Sorry, Aubrey, thank you.
No, okay.
I just wanted to see, so one was, if you don't like sage, what herb could you substitute it for?
Good question. If you were going for something that was dried, I would say doing something like thyme or rosemary, I think would be good to really bring out the flavors of the potato. Nice. I would say fresh as well, doing a thyme or a rosemary, same kind of ratios, maybe do a teaspoon of dried versus a tablespoon of the fresh. I think those pair really well with the potatoes. Awesome. Great question. And I just sprinkled in a little salt and pepper. Yeah.
Nice. If I could, and this is only a technical thing. So Corianne was online with me, and she's not seeing it streaming live. And we know that we had a lot of guests wanting to watch it live. Can you see that to see if it was going to the Unite for Her Facebook and the stream is being put over there?
I will double check that.
Thank you. Without burning anything. I don't want to take you from the kitchen. I also, as I've been watching, I've been pulling out the Cancer Fighting Kitchen cookbook. I don't know if you guys have that available, and I have my background on, so it's hard for you to see. But those first 40 pages, every like ingredient that Aubrey was talking about, I was looking up just to see those properties in it. For I know it just it empowers me to feel like, okay, everything I'm eating is doing some kind of job in my body that is, just giving me that good support. Aubrey, what do you think? Anything going on over there on Facebook?
I just restarted it. So it looked like it was going, but I just restarted it to double check. So do you want to see if Corianne says she can see it now?
I will. Yeah. And you just keep going. Yep. Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. Feel
All
free to
right.
interject if you need.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. Well, I've got my potato hash started. We've got the potatoes, the onions, the peppers. We've got everything going. I turned the heat down a little bit because it's starting to crisp up on the bottom. What I'm going to do is I might put a little extra oil in it too, just to kind of help out with the crisping on the bottom. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move on and I'm going to start my second recipe. So I'm very excited to share with you that I will be cooking out of the Cancer Fighting Kitchen cookbook. For those of you who are Unite for Her participants and you have that cookbook, feel free to take a look. I will be cooking the minestrone soup from page 57. So if you want to take a second, flip to it, go right ahead. What I'm going to start with is I have my Dutch oven. If you just have like a big pot, works exactly the same. So starting out with that Dutch oven, I am going to turn it on medium heat. What I like about the Dutch oven is that it gets the whole container warm. It's so nice if you have people over or, maybe you get a little soup and then you're coming back for more later. It keeps things warm for a long time and it helps to kind of cook things through. So I'm just going to move the lid to the side for now. And Sue, how are we looking online? Are we live on Facebook?
We are. That fixed it. Well done.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Well, for anybody joining on Facebook, welcome. I just started a potato and beet hash. I have potatoes, sweet potatoes, peppers, and onions in here with some sage, salt, and pepper. You didn't miss much. So we're about to start a minestrone soup from the Cancer Fighting Kitchen cookbook, page 57. I have my double boiler heated up to medium heat. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start getting together what's called the mise en place. So I like to say mise en place is everything in its place. So I like to get all my things chopped up and ready ahead of time so that in the moment I'm not putting something in the pan and then coming back, I'm like, oh, I forgot to cut this. So I'm going to start grabbing those things that we need to get together. All right, we've got some celery. We've got some onions. I've got some carrots and zucchini. So I've got a whole boatload of items that are going in today. I'm just going to start chopping things. My celery, I like to keep it in a nice glass of water. That helps so that the celery doesn't get wilted. So some of you may have previously had this happen to you where you keep celery in the fridge and then all of a sudden you go to take it out and the celery is soggy or squishy or, bendy. When you store it in water, kind of like you would store fresh flowers, it helps to make sure that the water is constantly being absorbed into the celery. All right, so I'm chopping up some celery. I like to do it at a little bit of a slant. Just adds a nice little touch or visual. All right, and I'm going to cut up about 2 more stalks of celery just to kind of make sure that I have plenty in my soup. If you're not a big fan of celery or anything really that we're discussing today, you can always take it out, swap it for something else. If you're looking for something that has a similar crisp bite to celery, you could put in some fennel. Fennel is a good option as well. It has a very strong flavor. So if you've never tried it, make sure you give it a try before you put it in. It kind of tastes like black licorice or anise, but I think it adds a nice flavor as well. All right, I'm going to rinse off my zucchini. I need about a cup of each of these vegetables. So this I'm eyeballing a little bit. I do have a cup measure here. So if I'm unsure about anything, I can definitely measure that to make sure. But this is a pretty big zucchini. So I'm going to go ahead and start with half of it. And I think that should probably get us through. If you're struggling with anything like neuropathy and you're having issues with chopping things, I would always recommend trying to look for those convenience items that you can find at the store. So getting the pre-chopped celery, getting the pre-diced onions, things that are just going to make it that much easier for you. You can also grate zucchini, which I think is nice, and it just makes things a little bit simpler sometimes. Adds a nice texture to the soup as well. So that's an option too if you don't necessarily want to chop up a zucchini. It's also a good way to kind of save it and freeze it. So take the zucchini, grate it with a grater that you would grate cheese or what have you, and then just save it in a bag in the freezer. All right. So, yep, I definitely think that half of the zucchini is the way to go. I've already got a good bit of zucchini here on my plate. While I'm chopping this up, does anybody have any questions or anything unanswered in the chat? I just want to make sure I'm mindful of that.
Yeah, so I've been typing away a little bit and answering them, but I know that we're live on Facebook, so I'll just go over some of them that we're answering.
Sure.
First of all, I loved your tip on the neuropathy and getting those chopped vegetables. It's such a great idea, Aubrey. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the questions was, would yellow squash be a good substitute?
Yeah, I think that would be a great substitute. They have a similar flavor, which is nice since they're both those summer squash. So especially if you like grow them in your garden, or maybe you get them in a CSA share, perfect substitute.
Yep. And then we just had a couple questions about the farm box. Is it a vegetable share? Is it a meal kit? And I did share with the audience that it is a vegetable share. If you're a part of the Unite for Her community, that is a passport offering that we give. And they're one of our partners. And then the other one was how to get the Fighting Kitchen cookbook. And again, if you're in our community, you would have received that. But if you are not yet, you can actually get it on Amazon at a great price. So just get right there on Amazon, and the Fighting Kitchen cookbook it will probably be at your doorstep tomorrow. They are so quick. Deliveries.
They are really, so fast.
I don't know if I should be worried about that or, you know. Yeah. And then Kim was asking, she said, I've noticed that zucchini skin sometimes has sand in it. If I want to eat the skin, how do you recommend getting the sand pieces out?
That's a good question. So I've noticed too, sometimes depending on where you get it from, there's kind of that grit, you know, or almost like the spikies on the outside of the zucchini. I would recommend giving it a good scrub with a scrub brush. So if you wash your vegetables with any kind of like produce wash, or you soak them at all, anything like that, also taking that extra step to scrub it with a vegetable brush can help to kind of get any of that grit or anything off of the outside. So that would be my recommendation for that. Really great question.
It's perfect. And then Jill was wondering, are you able to use a spiralizer? I think that's like one of those tools. I love them, by the way.
Yeah.
For the zucchini instead of slicing it. So I feel like,
yeah,
whatever you like, right?
Yeah, really, whatever shape works for you. I'm cutting these carrots into some half moons and circles. So, you know, there is no rhyme or reason, you know, kind of doing whatever is easiest for you. And the spiralizer makes it so nice. You just have to twist the zucchini. You could really twist the carrot too, you know, spiralize that as well.
Yeah. And then Linda was asking, what type of potato did you use in the hash?
Good question. I use a sweet potato and a russet potato. I would say any potato is good. You know, a Yukon Gold or a butter potato, any kind of white potato would be good. I've also used purple sweet potatoes before too. Those are very fun. They do, I've noticed, cook up a little bit faster than like a traditional sweet potato. They have a different texture. So just being mindful of that if you make any changes, kind of keeping your eyes on what you're cooking, and always testing things, you know, seeing how they're going, seeing if they need to be cooked longer or shorter, keeping an eye on it that way. All right, so I gave our hash a little start. It's looking good. It's nice. It's crisping up. What we want is the potatoes to be soft. So that's going to be our main concern when we're thinking about the hash. What I'm going to do now for the minestrone is I'm going to pour some oil into my pot. And I'm going to add in my onion. Again, I spared everybody the tears. I chopped the onion ahead of time. My eyes are not very good with onions, so I'm happy to do that in advance. All right, so I've got one yellow onion in here. I diced it. Whatever dice level works good for you in a soup. So if you want them really fine for really small bites, certainly go ahead and do that, or you can leave them a little bit larger, whatever works best for you. I'll give that a stir. I'm gonna let these cook for just a little bit, about 2 or so minutes, not very long. While those are cooking, I'll show you, like I said, my mise en place. So I got all my veggies chopped up. I've got my celery hiding underneath here, my carrots, my zucchini. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my preparations ready for my herbs and spices that I'm going to put in to add some flavor. So I have just a little dish here that I'm going to put them in. I'm going to use half of a teaspoon of oregano. And again, feel free to play with these spices. I'm going to use half a teaspoon of thyme, and these are all dried, but you could use fresh if you'd like. If you use a fresh herb, I would recommend adding it towards the end. So we'll be adding some parsley towards the end that's fresh, just so that it doesn't get too overcooked and wilted on the inside. So I would say save that for the end. I'm going to put a little sprinkle, very, very optional, of some crushed red pepper flakes. If you don't like spice, just skip this step. I'm going to just put a sprinkle. I feel like a little can go a long way sometimes. All right. And then when I get everything in, I'm just going to salt and pepper it as well. So I've let these cook for, I'd say, about a minute or two. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in my other vegetables.
And then Aubrey, just to share with the group, all of these recipes will be posted, right? So if they miss something, or please don't worry about taking perfect notes, we will have them posted. And where is Corianne popping them in?
Yes, so they are going to be on our Unite for Her library. So that is a tool available to all, whether you are a program participant or not. And I would encourage you to visit it. It's at uniteforher.org/her library. It is an educational resource. We have videos of cooking demonstrations and fitness and meditation and yoga, as well as some of our other educational offerings. So we have recordings of our Ask the Expert series and our speaker series, which are two great things that we like to offer to just give some insights and education. Sue, do you have any more information on the Ask the Experts and the speaker series?
Yeah, so I just put it in the chat so that way you guys can check out the Her Library. It is amazing resource. And every month, Erin and I, who is Aubrey's colleague, are hosting. So we'll host, in the beginning of the month, the first Thursday is our speaker series. The last Thursday is our Ask the Experts. And we do that every month. However, we have gotten so many topics that are very front of mind. We've actually had more than just 2 a month. So please just follow us along. Make sure you get on our newsletter, because we do a lot of emails just to tell you that it's coming up. Of course, registration is free. That is all about, us serving our community in a way that's very thoughtful, front of mind. But anything that is really a topic that you want to hear, don't hesitate to send us an email as well. You can go to info@Unite4Her, or if any of you have our email addresses because you're in the program, just shoot us an email and say, I would love to have information on X, because that is really how we get a lot of our new topics. And very excited that we're trying to offer these now in Spanish so that we have that availability. And then, we just did one on nipple sparing, was one of the newer, like, breast reconstruction, and just how far we've come. So they're always just very thoughtful, incredible experts and advisors. We have tons of resources. And I do recognize a lot of the names that are on here tonight. So I think many of you are very familiar with it.
That's wonderful. And there's such, like Sue said, there's such good topics, they're the questions that everybody's wondering, but maybe we don't always ask. So definitely logging on to see some of those, and watch old ones, historical ones, if maybe you have questions and we've done the speaker series on them. All right, so a couple updates. I stirred our hash, looking good. It's okay if you brown a little on the bottom. I do that all the time. One really easy way to kind of help clean that out is called deglazing, which we'll do with actually our minestrone in a little bit. Just pouring a little bit of liquid in there kind of helps you to get some of that excess off the bottom. I put my veggies in our minestrone as well as our herbs and spices. So I'm going to let that cook for just a few moments. While I'm letting that cook, I'm going to drain some kidney beans and give them a rinse. You could use canned kidney beans. I have here no salt added canned kidney beans. I like to try to get those if I can, the no salt added option, but it's not always an option with everything. You could also use dried kidney beans, just making sure you're soaking them ahead of time. So if you use dried, I would use about 2 cups. If you're using canned, I have just 1 can here. And you can also switch up the beans. So if you don't like kidney beans, they're a little starchier of a bean. You could use a pinto bean or a black bean or a chickpea, a garbanzo bean. There are so many different options that you could use. Again, cooking is all about being flexible and enjoying the foods you like to enjoy. You know, sometimes we have taste changes and sometimes we're navigating those for a while. And so I always say what tastes best is going to be the best. So if, you know, a recipe calls for a squeeze of lemon juice and you say things with a lot of acid taste better, put a bigger squeeze, put a whole lemon in there. You know, having all of those kind of changes to make it taste delicious to you is what's most important. All right, so we've got our veggies back here. What I'm going to do is I am going to now add in those beans. So I've got them all rinsed here. I'm also going to add in 2 more things. I'm going to add in crushed tomatoes. I feel like with canned tomato items, you can sometimes be pretty flexible. The crushed tomatoes are nice because it's almost that tomato sauce consistency. So it gives it the tomato flavor. And it also gives it a little bit of texture as well. It calls for a 14-ounce can. This is a 28-ounce can. Again, it was what I could find at the store. So I'm going to use half of that. Eyeballing is perfectly fine. All right, and so last but not least, I'm gonna put in some broth. So I have 8 cups of broth that I have here. I put it into a separate container just to make sure that I had it all and had it all measured out. So I'm going to first give this a little stir. Just wanna make sure the tomatoes have covered everything. All right, and then I'm gonna add in my broth. This is a really easy recipe to make a smaller batch of, because if you're looking at this, even I'm looking at this like, wow, this is a lot of broth. If you're a smaller household, you know, I would certainly suggest making a half batch of it. You know, you don't have to feel like you have to make the exact portions that are in the recipe. You can be flexible with it. All right, and so I have my broth in there. That was some veggie broth that I used. I like to use vegetable broth usually, or I'll use bone broth. Really, whatever your preferences are. The bone broth is going to have a lot of minerals in there, so that could be a good alternative as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this now. So I kept my lid to the side, cover it, and I'm going to bring it to a boil. So I'm going to turn it on high. Then when we have it on high and it comes to a boil, I'm going to reduce it to a simmer. So like a light bubbling in there. And then I'm going to cook that for about 10 minutes. That helps the zucchini, the celery, the carrots, everything cook and all those flavors meld together. With soup, I feel like there is no length of time that's too long to cook it. You know, you're going to keep melding in those flavors the longer you leave it on the stove. So that's why I like the Dutch oven too, because then it just keeps that warm and it keeps melding in those flavors. All right. So I've got here my potatoes and my hash. They're looking pretty good. What I'm going to do, we're going to be cooking these for a little bit longer, but just to test so that I can show everyone, I'm going to take one of the potatoes out to show you kind of what we're looking for when they're done. All right, and so being careful, we have our potato here. I had to press fairly hard to get my fork into it, meaning the potato is not cooked all the way through. It kind of punctured the top layer easily, but the inside is still firm, meaning that it needs more time. So we're definitely giving it more time. We still have the beets to add as well, but I wanted to make everybody know that's kind of what we're looking for. Usually that's a pretty good test in a lot of things we're cooking, whether it's potatoes, whether it's squash, anything kind of more starchy, even just regular vegetables. We want to make sure that our fork is going through it to test for that doneness. All right, and our timer, it looks like it's almost up, but I can also, I think, hear the bubbling of our soup. So let's give that a look. I think I was hallucinating because it's not bubbling. So we'll give that a little bit more time. I'm going to turn off the timer. We were pretty much at just about 25 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab the beets. Those are the next things to go in. All right, and so my beets here I have pre-chopped. I saved everyone the red nightmare on my countertop with the beets. I would say with beets, just being cautious of your surroundings, not wearing maybe your favorite blouse when you're cutting beets. They do let off a lot of juice, which the beets and the beet juice are so nutritious. They have a lot of B vitamins in them. They have a lot of those plant phytonutrients. So beets are great to incorporate, especially because I feel like they're pretty quick to cook. As far as you just wrap them up, put them in the oven for an hour, and they're done. That's all you have to do. But there is that added piece of the beet juice and just making sure that, you know, you don't have anything nearby or you're not wearing a white top, you know, keeping on an apron as well. They also do have beets that they sell pre-cooked at the store. I've seen them kind of in the refrigerated produce section. Those are a really easy way so that you don't have to take the time to buy the beet, prep the beet. You know, if you have something later on or you want to just have them as a snack or on top of a salad, those prepped beets are a really good way to go. So I already cooked these. I cooked these with a farm box recipe actually. So what I did is I took the beets, washed them and scrubbed them real well. I didn't take the skin off. I think I just saw that question come through. I left the skin on.
It did, yep.
You could eat it with the skin or without the skin. If you're having the skin, just make sure you give it a nice good wash. I put some olive oil, salt, and pepper on it, and then I wrapped it twice in tin foil. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Then I just put them in the oven at 375 for 75 minutes. I took them out. I put them in the fridge because they were too hot to handle yesterday, and they're all cooked. So I'm going to put them in with our potatoes for a kind of final cooking. So you can even kind of see and hear what I was talking about with the red beet juice. It does kind of get all over. So just being mindful of that. But the beets, if you've never had them, they have a really nice earthy flavor. So they go really well with potatoes. I love them on a salad. I think they add a really nice flavor profile there because of that hearty, earthy flavor. So I'm just going to give these a good mix. All right.
Aubrey, was that 2 cups of beets?
Yes, it was 2 cups of beets. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Arlene. I did put the link in the chat. It actually is a special page. It's uniteforher.org/cookwithus. So everyone, I have that link in there. You can just click on that and it will take you right to the page. It will show you the events that we're doing all month and then also the recipes.
Yes. So hopefully you guys will be able to cook it at home. Share it with us if you do. Tag us on social media.
Totally.
Send it to us via email. We love to see the pictures.
For sure.
All right, so I just started my timer for 10 minutes. I have my beets on here that I'm going to cook these for 10 minutes. You can already maybe see some of my potatoes are a little bit pink, so we might have a little pink ending here with our beets in there. I have as well the soup. That's going to need to simmer for about 10 minutes. It's just about at a boil. So I'm going to just go ahead and put these on the same timeline. And I'm going to start to put that down to about a low temperature. You can put it on the lowest if it's at a vigorous boil. I'm going to leave it just a little bit above low on my oven because my oven gets pretty low. But everybody knows their oven the best. All right. So
Aubrey, I love that I love that you're so flexible in the kitchen because I do feel like, cooking, unlike baking,
Mhm.
you don't have to be so exact. And
Yes.
it's okay. Like if you don't want sage, put in rosemary. If you don't want white potatoes, put in sweet potatoes. If you're not perfectly boiled and you have one timer set, just put them together and it will
Yeah.
all work out. It will all work
Yes.
out.
I think it's good to be flexible. Like you said, baking is a kind of a different story. Those ratios need to be definitely more specific. But like I said before, cooking is really about what tastes good to you. And so that flexibility to change flavors, but also the flexibility to say, oh, this said it was supposed to cook for 20 minutes. It looks like it's done now. I think I'm going to test it. Or it's been 20 minutes and they're still rock hard. I'm going to leave it on for a little bit more. So keeping that flexibility, nothing's set in stone. You can always fix things, change things, and you can always kind of, revise as needed. I'm going to head to my fridge and grab something that's going into our minestrone. So a lot of times minestrone will have pasta in it. I took it up a notch. I have some farro that I pre-cooked because I really love farro. You could use pasta or farro. Farro is a wonderful whole grain, so it has a lot of fiber in there. It's got a lot of minerals as well with our whole grains, and they have some protein, which is great. So I'm going to put this to the side. I cooked it earlier. It's going to go in our soup soon. But something else that's going into our soup, which is also fun and red and bright, is we have some Swiss chard. So I'm going to give it a little rinse just to get any dirt off of it. With our leafy greens, if you like to give your veggies a good wash, I would say, soaking them in either the produce wash mixed with water or some water and vinegar, just to kind of get any of that additional dirt off of them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Swiss chard. I'm going to chop off these ends because I won't need those. And then I'm going to start to dice it up. Yep.
We have a question from Jill. She wanted to know what else could we substitute for the pasta or the farro just being gluten-free. And I know we have a lot of seeds, like your quinoa or your millet, but I didn't know if there was anything else that you could think of there.
Yeah. That definitely my first suggestion would be quinoa. That's going to be probably one of the most comparable gluten-free grains that you could use. You could also do like a gluten-free lentil pasta or something like that if you wanted to substitute that. That's going to have a lot of protein and fiber. So those would be my recommendations. Another gluten-free grain, something like a quinoa, or perhaps a gluten-free pasta, like a lentil pasta or a black bean pasta instead. You could also put lentils in it, and that would give kind of the same bite as a piece of pasta.
Nice. Yeah. They have all kinds now. They have chickpea pasta. I had that. I actually thought that was really good. Eileen wanted to know, do you use the stems or leaves of Swiss chard in general?
Yeah, so I'm using the leaves of the Swiss chard today. Generally, those are what I primarily use. You could use the stems. I would say, chopping them up if you wanted to. They kind of have, here, I have one here. They kind of have the same texture as celery. So if you were putting celery in something, you could perhaps use these stalks if you were trying to eliminate more of that food waste. But I would say largely using those leaves on the Swiss chard is what we're doing.
And is that a little bitter, Aubrey? I always felt like Swiss chard to be, I needed to put lemon or sea salt, or definitely had a little bitter taste. Is that just the way I'm cooking it, or?
Yeah, good question. So Swiss chard is definitely a more, I guess you could say, potent green flavor wise, versus like a lettuce or something along those lines. So sometimes when we cook it, what we want to do is we want to make sure we're adding in those things like that lemon and that acid or that salt or the herbs to really brighten up the flavor. Making sure that it's cooked well will help to kind of get out any of that like bitter flavor, but it definitely does have, more of a punch than something like a romaine or, a more standard salad green.
Great.
All right, so I've got my Swiss chard. I chopped it up. I'm just going to give it like a little fine dice. It's going to go into the minestrone. So I have to make sure that it's going to fit on my spoon when I'm eating it. All right. So I've got all of that here. I'm going to just check in on everything, see how this is doing. Looks like the hash is doing very well.
I really wished I ate before I had your class here, Aubrey, because I am just getting so hungry. How far away are you from Westchester?
Yeah, come on over, Sue.
Mhm.
This is when I think everybody wishes they had, smell-o-vision and could smell everything through the
No, I
camera.
am envisioning it for sure. I feel like
Well,
we should
hopefully,
have our cooking classes and tell people, bring rosemary, bring some so you can smell it, as you're
yeah,
doing the class.
yeah, so that you know what everything smells like as it's going in. The herbs just brighten everything up so much. I just took the lid off and was wafted with, some beautiful smells. We have our soup again cooking. We're making sure that those zucchini are cooked, the carrots, the celery. So I'll put that lid back on. One of the last components, like we mentioned at the beginning, so those of you on Facebook may not have seen, I am going to make a poached egg. So I am going to fill up my pot with some water. This poached egg is going to be for the hash, so it's going to go on top of that hash. I'm going to fill it about halfway because what I'll be doing is swirling the water around. So if you fill it all the way up to the top, then the water might come splashing out. So we don't necessarily want that to happen. All right. And any questions in the chat, let me take a pause, make sure there's no Facebook questions, no Zoom questions that I've missed.
We've been getting through them pretty quickly, if you didn't mind all my interruptions, right?
No,
Yeah.
I love
I'm
people
just so
asking questions in
excited
a
about this
moment.
poached egg. I can't tell you. I have just been talking about it. I talked to Erin about it. I love poached eggs. I can never get it right. So I'm going to watch you
I
very
feel like
closely. No pressure, Aubrey.
and I will say, I'm not the poached egg expert. This is my strategy for poaching an egg. And this is something that I've just kind of used. I also have seen they do sell egg poachers. It's kind of like a little basin that you put into a shallow pan of water and poaches the egg. So if you like poached eggs and you're like, I can't make these, I don't know how to do it, one of those little egg poachers could definitely be a good option too. So a poached egg, if you haven't had one before, is kind of between a sunny side up egg or an egg of that kind and a hard boiled egg. So the outside, the whites are more cooked like a hard boiled egg, not that firmness as much, but then the inside is going to have that runny yolk. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. So if you don't like a runny yolk, perhaps a poached egg is not for you. There are lots of other things that we could put on top of our hash. You could put avocado on top. I have one today. It's still a little hard, so I'm not sure I'll be able to get into it, but that would be a really good option to put on top. You could put some fresh cheese, like a goat cheese or a feta cheese if you do dairy, and have that on top. It would add such a nice flavor. Even just topping it with some fresh herbs, I think would be delicious. Maybe make a vinaigrette with some herbs in it. On our Her Library, one of the things that is up is I created a back to basics is what they call them video, which just is explaining some different kitchen tactics. So I explained how to create your own dressing. So maybe you do that. Maybe you create a dressing and you use that for your potato hash. All right. So I'm just gonna keep mixing this. It's looking great. It's looking very pink. I will say, very fitting for our Unite for Her cooking demo. So, and let
Pink
me
is
check
everywhere. We
on.
can't get away. Can't get away
I
from it.
know. That's my timer. All right, so I'm gonna just continue to let this sit there for a second. It looks like some of the potatoes could maybe use a little bit more time. So while I'm finishing up everything else, I'll just leave that to continue. I'm gonna take the lid here off of my soup and I'll move that to the side. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add in this Swiss chard that I chopped up. And let me give that a stir first because that is sitting at the top. And this soup is a great example of that eat all of your colors mentality. We've got green, we've got orange, we've got the red with the Swiss chard. We've got so many different colors in here. All right, so I'm gonna let that sit for a second. And then I'm gonna add in the farro. If you were using pasta or a different grain, now would still be the time to add it. I like to use my spoon to just break it up. If you leave it cool, sometimes it sticks together a bit. Sometimes that's nice to get a little bit more of like a chunk for a bite, but just making sure you mix that up. And then I'm going to slowly, be very careful because the soup is hot, but I'm going to put in my farro. And it smells so good. All right, so let me give that a stir as well. All right. And it's looking great. So many different colors, so many different textures in here too. Lots of different things in here as well. We're still waiting a little bit on the water to boil. So this will be our last little touch, our poached egg. I'm gonna let this cook back here. I'm gonna turn it back up to about medium. And what I'm gonna do for our final touch is I'm going to chop up some fresh parsley. So I have my parsley here, similar to how I had my celery. I put it in a cup of water. Just like those fresh flowers, if you want, you can cut the bottom of the parsley. It kind of helps that water absorb up into it, and then leave it in the cup of water, and that helps so that it doesn't wilt as quickly. I'm sure that I am not the only one who is guilty of buying fresh herbs, and then I have them planned for a recipe, and then the recipe doesn't happen, and then I've got fresh herbs that are starting to wilt in my fridge. So you can also freeze your fresh herbs. Don't be afraid to freeze them. You can certainly use them in that way as well. All right, so I'm giving them a rinse, kind of getting any of the dirt or anything like that off, wring out any water. And I'm gonna twist the tops off where we have all of our parsley. We don't need the stems. And then similar to the leaves that we cut before, I'm just gonna give them a nice rough chop. Again, being flexible with yourself. If they're big pieces, that's okay. If you've got some stems in there, that's all right. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just what works for you. So I like to cut in both directions just to get them a little bit smaller. All right, so I've got a whole ton of parsley here. You need about a 1/4 cup fresh, but our herbs and spices are going to ounce for ounce have so many antioxidant nutrients. So I really like to add them in and add in some extras because I feel like it just gives that additional punch. Plus it gives all that wonderful flavor. So it's a really good thing to add in. If you don't have parsley, you could use something like cilantro. If you like cilantro, I know cilantro is controversial. Not everybody likes it. Some people think it tastes like soap, which is very much true. There is an enzyme that we possess that either makes it taste like soap or not. So if you think it tastes like soap, you are not alone. There are many other people who feel that same way. But if you want to substitute the parsley for something else, you know, just your favorite fresh herb, basil would be nice. A nice like leafy herb is really great for this recipe. All right, so our hash is pretty much done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the heat on there. I'm going to take my parsley. I'm going to put that into my soup. And we have a whole boatload in there, which is great. I see a little stalk, so I'm just going to take that out. And I'm going to give it a stir. And then I'm just going to turn the heat off. So I don't need the parsley to cook intensely or anything like that. So I'm going to turn the heat off on that. Not my water, almost did that. And my water is just about boiling. We want it to be at a soft boil. And so this poached egg, super quick, takes about 3 minutes. So it'll be a quick, nice wrap up to everything. What I'm going to do is get an egg from the fridge. And I'm going to take this egg. And to make it a little easier on myself, I'm going to crack it into a cup. All right, so I'll crack my egg. crack it into a cup. I think for me, it just makes it easier to have that cup as the middleman versus trying to crack it and immediately put it into the water.
I think that was my problem, Aubrey. I was going right for it, impatient.
It's the cup as the middleman that changes everything.
Aubrey, I had a question
All right.
in the chat, and it was from Arlene, and I think it's a question that a lot of our community asks. She was told that eggs have estrogen, and so MBC is to limit eggs. Do you get that question a lot, Aubrey, when you're having your nutrition talks with our women and men?
Yeah, good question. We get a lot of questions about estrogen containing foods and consuming those, and many of the estrogens that we're consuming are going to be phytoestrogens. And so eggs similarly are very safe to consume because they're going to have a ton of different nutrients in them. They're going to have protein, vitamin D, vitamin A, and it's not so much the worry about that estrogen. We do get that question often. We get that question about soy products and flax seeds and milk and eggs, but largely these are all going to be safe for us to consume. So I would say, especially if you like eggs, consuming them, having one for breakfast on a Sunday or something like that, enjoying your poached egg as part of your balanced diet is a wonderful way to have that.
And maybe they could even make an upgrade, because I think it's, the hormones that are going into the chickens, and they can make an upgrade to that pasteurized raised eggs. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you wanted to make a healthier upgrade, you could upgrade to those pasture raised eggs that you get at the store versus just the standard traditional egg you would get in a carton. Just looking out for that on the label. Something like that is going to be one of those, again, healthier upgrades that's going to support, because of the differences in the feed and the differences in the experience of the chickens as well. So kind of looking for that as just maybe better for you or healthier upgrade.
Yeah, and they also have like lutein and selenium and all of these incredible antioxidants, which are so powerful that sometimes we forget about all the good things that this one ingredient can do.
Yeah, which I think I always say it is it's the blessing and the curse of the internet. We can find out anything we need at our fingertips, but sometimes we get more information than we need, or we get conflicting information that's confusing. And so that's what we're here to help you with at Unite for Her. We're here to support, give you the facts. That's what our Ask the Expert series and our speaker series are helpful for as well. So definitely, if you can go on and check those and see if they cover any of those topics you've been wondering about. We have a wonderful blog on our website, Is Soy Bad? So if you've heard anything about soy, reading that blog post, we have a lot of information on the blog and on the library to use and to make sure you get those, again, questions answered.
Thank you.
All right, so I have my egg in here. Yes.
I know, you're
Sue,
so
you'd be
calm and
happy
cool
to know.
doing that poached egg, I'll tell you. I'm a little
It did
jealous
look a
right
little
now.
bit. It looked a little bit like my yolk maybe cracked a little bit in the cup. So it may not be the most perfect break open of the yolk, but I wanted to make sure we got to it. My egg is in here. A couple pieces are separating, but most of it is intact. What I did is I brought it to a boil. This I am going to put the timer on for, just because I want to make sure that I don't just leave it and forget about it. I brought the water to a rolling boil, a nice soft boil, nothing, crazy thrashing water. And I started to spin the water to turn it into a whirlpool. So I spun the water around, and then I quickly poured the egg in. And now I'm just letting the egg cook in there. It cooks for about 2.5 minutes or so, depending on how you like your doneness of your egg. So I like to have the nice runny yolk, so 2.5 minutes. You could do 3 minutes if you want to make sure everything is super well cooked. I did put a little bit of my soup in our bowl, so I will show you what it looks like. We have our minestrone soup. I know Sue was talking about eating some soup and having some vegetable soup yesterday. So it is soup season, and it feels so nice to have those warm, heartwarming soups.
Yeah, I also like your tip about the herbs at the end when they are fresh, because I think that is so valuable. Sometimes we put those fresh herbs in too early, And when you wait until the end, you just get so much of the flavor.
It just gives you that nice flavor punch, it gives that extra kick. All right,
Like
so I
adding a
put
little bit
some
of
hash.
lemon juice, just that extra kick,
I think that would be a really good addition to the soup. If you, on serving, add that squeeze of lemon or squeeze of lime juice, that would just, again, take it up a notch. Even if you did like orange juice, a little bit of fresh orange juice, I think just to brighten it up would be great. All right, so I've got my egg in here. It's got about 15 seconds left. I've got my hash. I'm gonna grab a slotted spoon. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to just take my egg right out and I'm going to put it onto my hash. And then I'll do a test with everybody to see how it looks on the inside. It'll be the moment of truth for us all. All right, and I just want to make sure I get the water off. Sometimes, depending on how it cooks, some of the water might just stay in a little pocket. But I've got my poached egg here on top of my
well
hash.
done, Aubrey.
Very steamy, but I'll give you a first look. Oh, and it looks like runny yolk. We were successful. So I've got the beautiful runny yolk on there.
Yeah.
I've got my hash. And again, topping it with whatever you like, So putting on your favorite herbs and spices, putting on an egg, putting on some cheese, what have you, whatever's your favorite. I'm going to do the tough part. I'm going to taste it and let everybody know how it went. And it's delicious. It is so, so good. So that was it. We have.
I'm going to do that egg tonight. I am now inspired. I am going to at least do the egg tonight. I'll do the rest of the recipe over the weekend. But I'm doing that egg
right,
tonight.
The egg. It'll be the tester egg before the weekend.
Yeah.
Well, that's our 2 potato and beet hash. We also have our minestrone soup, again, from the Cancer Fighting Kitchen cookbook. All of this, in an hour. And so we're really inspired here by making these recipes that are reachable and that, you feel comfortable cooking in your own kitchen. So I hope everyone feels inspired to try these recipes and know that they're really nourishing and they're really going to support your overall health, your inflammation, and give you a ton of antioxidant nutrients, as well as those plant proteins, things like that. So I hope everyone enjoyed today. And any questions before, we are hopped off?
No, just a lot of love and thank you. It was great. I loved the class, Aubrey. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Facebook watchers. Hopefully you caught up. If you have questions on the beginning that you didn't see, certainly let me know and I'm happy to answer those. But again, the video will be up on our Her library as well as the recipes. So you'll be able to see those there.
Awesome. You make it look easy, Aubrey.